Prospect House Media.
And now, prepare yourself for the only weekly podcast you won't want to miss. Welcome to the Ameritocracy Show with Troy Edgar, live from our studios in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C.
Hey everybody, I am Troy Edgar and welcome to the Ameritocracy Show. Thank you for tuning in and checking it out. It is greatly appreciated. This podcast examines the conditions for personal and professional growth and opportunity across America. In this episode of Ameritocracy, I met with JB Jaso at our LA studio. JB, a former U.S. Army veteran who made the successful transition from military service to a leadership role in the sports industry. From his Long Beach roots to serving his country and now overseeing security for the Los Angeles Angels, we look into the challenges and rewards of his military service, including his expertise in the Army's CBRNE unit, or better known as the Chemical, Biological, Radiological, Nuclear, and Explosives Operations Group, and how he prepared for post-service life. JB also discussed Major League Baseball stadium security and his unwavering commitment to giving back. He shares his involvement with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, or PanCAN, a cause close to his heart, and his leadership role in the Orange County affiliate. Get ready for an inspiring conversation about leadership, service, and community. I hope you enjoy. Hey, JB, how you doing?
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me on today.
Oh, my God. So awesome to finally get together. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think I travel a lot, and I know you're on the road a lot with your job with the Angels, and it's just good to be able to get together.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Super excited about it.
Yeah. So, JB, your story in the opening, we go through a little bit of what your background is, but, exciting role that you got now within the Angels. But I'm also very focused and interested in your job with your charity. So I want to be able to kind of get to that a little bit and all the work that you're doing out there for pancreatic cancer. And so I was just, what I'd like to do is, if you wouldn't mind, just to start off introducing yourself to the audience and maybe a little bit of your background and where you started in your journey to your current job at the Angels.
Yeah, definitely. So JB Jaso, originally from Long Beach, California. So grew up in down here in Southern California, and went to high school at Long Beach Polytechnic High School, and really grew up in scouting, did some baseball when I was younger, made Eagle Scout, and then went off to college at the University of Arizona, and then joined the military, did 23-year career in the U.S. Army. And then,
thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you. And then after that, found myself in the sports industry as I transitioned out of the military.
Wow. So talk a little bit about, after you leave Long Beach, you go to Arizona, you're in the military. Can you give us, because I think you didn't do it justice, all the activity and some of your military service, I think the viewers would find very fascinating.
Yeah, so I think growing up here in Long Beach, very diverse community, and that's something that I've been always proud of, being here in Long Beach, and especially going to Long Beach Polytechnic High School, and a very diverse campus. And I think that really gave me the opportunity to really expand and really learn about culture and diversity. And as a young kid, growing up here, my dad worked for the Los Angeles Dodgers, the LA Kings, and the LA Lakers, actually working in the security realm, which was really cool. Growing up in that aspect and in that industry, I guess. And then he was also an Army reservist. So his ties to the military were really strong at that point too. He worked active duty and then transitioned into a reservist. So I was always around sports, always around the military growing up. And I think when you really look at service and duty and things that have happened within my early childhood, was all about, community service and being around sports and how do you give back. And I think that was really key for me. And then as a young kid, getting in the Scouts was huge. I think that was really the foundational knowledge that I really gained when it really came to service back into the community, learning so much about, just survival skills, but then also my early leadership development. And I think looking back at, one of my scoutmasters, Dennis Cahoe, and the way that he would really develop the kids and the scouts into becoming leaders was really, it was a huge impact to all of us. And I think as I went through scouting, I had the opportunity to do a thing called Scouts and Government Day here in Long Beach through the Long Beach Area Council. And that is when they connected scouts into different roles into the community. I was lucky to be connected to Jeff Kellogg. At the time was the 8th District City Councilman in Long Beach. And so that was the district I lived in at that time. So I was able to meet him, get connected with him. I was able to shadow him and his staff for the entire day. And I was able to see the impacts that he was able to make within the community as an elected official, and then the things that he did. Following that one day with him, I always stayed connected with his staff and with him. And he became a really good mentor of mine and a massive influence when it really came to community service and giving back to the community. So everything I did as a child was always shaped around giving back to the community. And then I did a lot of work with the Kellogg family and Jeff Kellogg and his campaigns, and then his service and the different activities that we did here in the community. So it was really, really cool to give back to the community. At one point, I think I was in middle school, I helped advocate for the Wyland mural on the Long Beach Sports Arena. So talked in front of the city council on why that was so important to bring that mural, which was I think it still is the world's largest mural. It's all faded now, but it's still really cool to see. Everybody thinks that's the aquarium when it's not, which I find funny. But all of that really combined as I made Eagle Scout my freshman year of high school, and then transitioned into service within the high school. Ran cross country, ran track. And it ended up my senior year of high school, ended up being the editor-in-chief of the yearbook. And then so I really ran that and really managed a group of students and to build this wonderful yearbook that we did. And then I was the co-captain of the cross country team. We won Southern California championships that year, my senior year. And then with that, through high school as a group of runners, at that point, the Long Beach Marathon had went dormant. And it really, as runners, we would always have to go to Orange County or even San Diego to go run. And so I think that was something that we really, it was a lot of travel for us. So what we decided to do, a group of us students, and one of my friends, Mark Hannaford, and my other really good friend, Tyler Nason, we decided, hey, let's start a 5K here in Bixby Knolls, which is a city here in Long Beach. And so I was 15, they were 13. And so let's just start this 5K run. And it ended up for 3 years being Long Beach's largest running event. 3 teenagers getting together, getting a whole bunch of sponsors, and then leading a group of adult volunteers, because obviously we needed the adults to sign contracts for us. And then it was great. For 3 years, that was a phenomenal event that we did here in Bixby Knolls. And
that's pretty incredible. So at an early age, you're starting to see that turning into your community, you could really start to make a pretty big difference. And, it's interesting when you talk about the Wyland Wall or the Wyland, the picture that's painted on the Long Beach Convention Center is that, I grew up in this area too. And I used to, everybody that listens to the show knows I'm kind of an 80s rocker metalhead guy, but I used to go to that convention center when it was all white before they painted it. I was wondering who was responsible for that, but it is pretty faded now. But let me ask you this, as you were kind of, doing your community work, you've got a great mentor. So thank you for that story of mentorship. You go off to college and then into the military. How, did you know you were going to go? Did you go ROTC? What was your choice of going into the military at that point?
Yeah, so I think for me, after going to the University of Arizona, not doing very well academically, which was the reason why I decided to pivot a little bit, reset, and do something else. But I knew I wanted to go to school and complete school. So at that point, it was join the military, get some more money for college, and really do 4 years. Utilize at that point, the Montgomery GI Bill to go back to school. So do my 4 years, get money for school. I'll refocus, be a little bit older, and hit the books again. So as I transitioned and moved and decided I was going to join the military, I didn't tell my parents initially. So I ended up coming back here to Long Beach over that summer break and talked to Army recruiter. I tried to talk to Air Force recruiter, but they never opened the door. And then ended up, I was like, I definitely don't want to be a Marine. And I definitely don't want to be a sailor because I don't want to be on the water that long. So the Army recruiter opened the door. And so I went and talked to them, and he got me hooked up. And I took the ASVAB, which is obviously the military battery to assess your knowledge and your skills. And I scored extremely well on that. And so they gave me some options, and it was really based off of, they gave me like, you could have any job in the military. There's 200 jobs in the Army. You could do whatever. And so I was like, okay, cool. I want to do a paralegal. And so I was like, that sounds cool. And then I could connect that to, because initially I was a poli-sci major at Arizona. So that really transitioned into like, well, that might be really well with what I'm majoring in. And, let's do that. So I go to our military entry processing system or center, and in LA, I signed the contract, and I go up there, and they're like, well, paralegal's not available. However, you can watch these videos, and these videos show you different jobs. And they were really pointing me at being a military police officer or at that point, it was a nuclear biological chemical specialist or NBC specialist. So I just saw the police officer out there directing traffic on this little platform, like on the video. And then I'm like, okay, they're not really doing a lot. But then I see the chemical guy that's in like, playing with beakers and glasses on, and, a white jacket. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. And then that's what I signed up for. And so it wasn't really... I was looking to get into local government is what my focus was. It was really to get back into the things I was doing here in Long Beach and giving back to the community. That's what I was really going to school for, poli-sci, probably get into politics, and that was the path. And so if people were to ask what I would be doing today if I wasn't in the military, that would be probably in city government somewhere or local government. And I just had so many influences in local government here. So I think that was where I wanted to go. But then that was that really quick right turn, to get in the military. And did 4 years there. Initially, my four-year contract there, which drove me to become which now it's called a chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear explosive. So it's CBRNE is what it's called, specialist. And that took me to, that's what I enlisted for. It took me to Alabama for training. And then ended up at Fort Lewis, Washington. Now it's Joint Base Lewis McChord, where I started off my first duty assignment, did 2 years there, and then shot out to South Korea. So I was in Camp Red Cloud, South Korea. Got there on September 9th. So September 8th, actually. So right before 9/11 occurred. So that was going to be my final year in the military. And literally, I had just gotten my equipment. It was all in duffel bags still. So my helmet, my vest and my bulletproof vest, basically, and all my armor and all the stuff was still in bags. I hadn't put it all together yet. I just remember the alarm sounding in South Korea. The air raid alarms were sounding, and everybody's running around. I'm looking out the window because at that point I could see my barracks were overlooking the commanding general of 2nd Infantry Division at that point. So I was able to look over, and I just saw all the military police cars running over to his house, and everybody's just going there. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is huge. I don't know what's going on. And I look at the TV. I had a Korean roommate, actually. So he was watching Korean TV, had the Korean news on, and literally I could just see the Twin Towers just in flames. But I literally thought it was in Hangul, so in Korean, so I couldn't understand anything was going on. And literally I thought it was a movie. And then so we all go running out to our day room, our little community area. And at that point, that's where we find out what's going on and everything happens. And I think at that point was that pivoting point where I was like, let me try to stay in a little bit longer, because obviously the nation is something's going to happen. We don't know what, but something's going to happen. We're probably going to end up going to war and with somebody and not sure who yet at that point. And so I decided to stay in, do another 4 years after that. So I re-enlisted probably the next month. So October of 2001 is when I re-enlisted again for another 4 years. And
There's a lot of people that did that patriotic move of, like a Call of Duty, you're already in. So it's kind of a re-up, knowing the dangers that would be potentially coming. So again, just I think everybody remembers too where they were at on 9/11, and Korea. It definitely, you don't know if you are vulnerable when you're out there. I'm sure that had to be kind of a odd feeling.
Yeah, definitely it was. I mean, you don't know what's going on. Like those air raid sirens go off. It could be, at that point, it was unstable relationships with North Korea. We were so close to the DMZ, so it's sort of like, are the North Koreans coming down? Like, who's doing this, or who's the attacks, or what's going on? But I would definitely say my year there was absolutely phenomenal. That was my first time really living somewhere on my own, like in obviously with the military, but living in a different country. And it was great. We were there. I was there during during the World Cup when Japan and Korea hosted it. So that environment was just great. Being around sports was awesome. So it was just fun. And obviously it was life-changing for all of us and how security was being looked at. But it was great.
So when you're doing your military career, and it's kind of that special ops type role, were you thinking at that point, and because it's chemical, biological, and radiation type work, it's pretty specialized. I know when I was at DHS, we had a group called CWMD, Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction. And it really was units that would deploy out to the Coast Guard or to different things, and they would come across a ship or somewhere, and they would have to send them on board to make sure like this wasn't the beginning of a smart bomb or a dirty bomb or something coming our way. So when that specialized skill, were you thinking, I'm probably going to stay in law enforcement at this point or some form of that, or were you getting to a point where you need to start thinking about your transition out of the military?
Through my career, I think I didn't really focus so much initially in my early years of my career. I didn't really focus a lot on the CBRNE stuff.
Yeah.
It was more after Korea, I went into be in infantry units. And so I was the one CBRN guy that was in the infantry units, trying to just make sure everybody had a mask and knew what the initial steps were. But as I transitioned throughout my career, I ended up being in the right positions in the right places, knowing the right people, and then going through an assessment selection to get into the Special Operations community, where I served 9 years at the Joint Special Operations Command. And while I was at the Joint Special Operations Command, or JSOC, at that point is when I really learned my technical skills and that specialty of really focusing at chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive capabilities, and what that really meant at a bigger, broader picture. And what did that mean in when you're really looking at a worldwide focus? And that was really my job when I got into the Special Operations community. It was looking at bigger, broader impacts, on really focusing at the chemical, biological aspects of things, and terrorist acts and terrorist activities, and how do we defeat that? So sort of that left of the boom type of thing. So we don't want it to go boom. We want to diffuse it and get rid of it before it ever hits boom. And so I think that was the bigger piece, was how do we work with our international partners, especially our Five Eye partners, right? So you have Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and the UK and in the United States. But then our 5 major partners and our allies, how do we work those together in a special field that is very small, and focusing at the CWMD world, or the countering weapons of mass destruction world, and then also working with our interagency partners, like you said, DHS and the NSA and all the 3-letter, 4-letter agencies, FBI, whatever. But then also all the international partners from all the 5 different countries as well. And I think really, as I led a program here within the Joint Special Operations Command, and really led a federal approach to that, and really building a community and bringing people together from all of our interagency partners throughout the world, and really building working groups and roundtables and exercises throughout the world. That was a lot of fun, and I gained so much knowledge and met so many great people. Some of these people are my friends for life, and but I think seeing that impacts, and like every time that we see something that happens, it's it's an impact. And just recently we saw the Taylor Swift concerts being canceled in Austria, right? And that was a very big aspect to. I was really happy to see it, not go boom, but it gets stopped before it went boom, right? And in my eyes and in my heart, like those people that saw that were probably some of the people that I helped train and help get their mindsets correct to make sure that didn't happen. And so seeing every individual get caught, and I would definitely say probably an international force that got together to help make that happen, makes me happy, And so I think that aspect of being in the military and focusing at the chem bio side of the house, I didn't think at a point, I never thought I would ever leave that, especially the chem bio piece or the explosives piece. I didn't think after 23 years of being in the military, I would ever leave that. But I guess as I began to transition out of the military and decided I was going to retire after 23 years, it was really funny because I didn't decide that until COVID happened. And finally I was able to sit down on the couch, and just sit down, relax, turn on Netflix and watch Tiger King. And literally as I'm watching Tiger King, I'm like, yeah, it's about time to retire. Wow. And I think that piece was, that was the point of, okay, now what do I do next? And I think that's the part that a lot of military members, when they stay in so long, you spend your entire adult life in the military, and then now it's what's next. All we know is the military, and how things are set. We know what we're going to wear every day. We know what time to be at every location that we need to be at, and so it's just how does that life change? And it's really scary. And I think it almost felt like at a point where I was back at 18-year-old high school student again, just graduated from Poly High School. And like, now what do I do? The same exact thing at 42 or whatever, 41 years old, and just figuring out like, oh, now what do I do?
So JB, don't you think it's interesting? I've explored this with a couple different veterans that had made it through over 20 years. The military, it's institutional. It's on a total way other side, prison, but any sort of institutional type situation where where to go to get your dinner, when for the most part, when people are going to sleep, if you're on a base, when it's the end of the day, when the horn starts bugling and people are going through the colors portion, but I think, and I equated a little bit when I left DHS is when you're at DHS or the JSOC, like we had a lot of different operations going on at DHS. And, when you're doing that job, it's long days, but you're the most informed you'll ever be as a human. Like I knew stuff that was going on before it was on the news. I'd come home and I would turn on the TV and I'm like, I wonder how they're going to interpret this today, and, but when I left, there was, and I will, self-efface myself. I don't think, my role was as important, but I definitely had that inside perspective and I missed it. I remember like the first 2 or 3 or 4 months with my wife going, God, it just seems so, it was like deadened. It was, it kind of had to like, and I've been blessed. I have so many different options and opportunities and I end up at IBM, but I remember like psychologically going through a little bit of a change. And so I was just kind of curious, here you are, JSOC, special ops, you're doing all this stuff. The world's, a pretty interesting place at that point. And then you end up in Houston, I believe, when you ended up getting out. How was that? And what did you find yourself? You went from Netflix to something at some point here.
Yeah, so I think definitely I was really lucky at JSOC because the manpower and how we set up things there. So when I decided to retire, I had a year left in the military to transition out. So I was really lucky, and JSOC gave me that opportunity. My leadership gave me that opportunity to focus at transitioning out. So at that point, I was there, but not really there. And at JSOC, I'll just never forget, like early on, the generals for JSOC. They would always talk about the JSOC train. The train's going 100 miles an hour. You're either on it, you're off of it. Even though I was assigned to the unit, I just felt I was still at the train station. I was off of it, and so they were still moving 100 miles ahead, still, going after the world's largest targets and doing the greatest things in the world. But for me, I was off. And so that last year was that transition, like what you almost said, was like, now you were 100% informed. I was still there, but not fully informed what was going on. But it also gave me the opportunity to really focus and find my why, like what was next in life. And, Simon Sinek, has that book and, finding your purpose, finding your why, and what's that why? And I think that was really important for me is, as I tailed in, after all those years at JSOC and 23 years in the military, was CBRNE life going to continue for me or not? And I didn't really know. I didn't really know what was next. And all I heard in that transition piece, and what I always heard everybody say, is military folks turn over or become a project manager or project manager or operations manager. So either ops manager or project manager. And so initially, as I started to figure out what I was going to do as project manager or ops manager, I didn't know what that meant, but I was going to do that. And so I didn't really understand that. And then it wasn't until I got into an organization, or I did a nonprofit organization. There's tons out there, thousands, but there was one that I initially focused on, which was called the Leader Transition Institute, based out of the DC area. Annie Brock is their CEO and president. But Annie really built an organization to really find, help transitioning service members and their families really find their purpose and their why, and really pull, really pull that out of somebody and really figure that out or help you build that. And I think her group of folks that she works with and has on her in her organization did a phenomenal job in doing that. And then really helping me at that point really narrow down the scope of what I really want to do. And what I found at that point, it was really what my happiness was being around sports, and that's what really like brought me so much joy and happiness. And at that point, my dad had already passed away. And then all those experiences I had when he worked with the Dodgers, the Kings, and the Lakers, like all that really brought me so much happiness. And then I ended up transitioning and working with another nonprofit organization called the Honor Foundation, which is really specifically focused at helping special operators in the military. So all branches of the military. So you have SEALs and Marine Raiders and obviously Green Berets and special operators in the Army, and really helps them really focus and really tailors the special operator into transitioning to become a civilian. And that is when I really started to build what my purpose was, and it was really at that point me connecting and learning more about people in the sports industry. And they helped me connect myself with and begin a network with sporting folks. And I really connected with Jay Hennessy from the Cleveland Guardians, who was also a Navy SEAL, had already gone through the Honor Foundation as well when he transitioned out. And now he's the vice president of learning and training for the Guardians. But he really helped me really learn more about the sports industry, learn about the different departments in the sports industry. And the sports industry is really built just like the military almost. I mean, you have one organization with a whole bunch of different jobs in a whole bunch of different fields. I mean, you have IT guys you have the plumber, you have like security folks and everybody else, operations guys, and, specialty folks that are working in, baseball ops or whatever, football ops. And so many different jobs and fields in the sports industry. And so really trying to figure out what I really wanted to focus at and specialize in if I had made it in the sports industry. And so that connection really brought me connecting with the Houston Astros organization and getting me connected with their minor league affiliate in Fayetteville, North Carolina. So it was the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. And so with that, I really connected really well and got an internship with the Astros organization through the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. And I spent a season with them, and that was just phenomenal. And the way they really taught me so much about stadium operations and the bigger, broader picture of stadium operations, from everything of fixing a scoreboard to fixing a seat to working security and how a mag works or a metal detector to fixing air conditions. And So that was really a big piece of the pie for me. And after that internship, I knew sports was it. And I really wanted to be in the sports industry.
So you're in
sure.
Houston then, or you're in, at this point, you're in the minor league team.
Right, North Carolina.
Yeah, in North Carolina. How did you get from there to the Angels?
Yeah, so as I continue to build a network in the sports industry, I think just getting to meet people and getting to learn more about their jobs and really, really building relationships, right? And I always talk about this is people want to work with people they like, right? And those relationships are really key. And it's not just calling and doing a phone, finding somebody on LinkedIn, requesting to talk to them one time, and then you talk to them and then at the end of that call, you're like, hey, do you have a job open? Like, it doesn't really work that way, right? And you build those relationships over time. And so I think that was really key. Just continue to talk and meet people. And I never asked for a job, actually. It was really interesting. People are like, hey, did you ask, the Dodgers for a job? Or did you ask Padres? Or did you ask, all these different teams? And I was like, absolutely not. I just was there to build relationships and then learn more about them, what schools they went to, what certifications did they get. And I think that was key for me. And everybody knew I was getting out and when I was getting out. And I just really depended on my relationships and my friendships that I built. And then branding myself a little bit better, like on, social media and really making that a focus and, LinkedIn and it was always just continue to communicate with everybody and not with the purpose of trying to get a job, just to build a relationship.
So JB, I think it's interesting just to juxtapose that against corporate, right? So in my job, I'm at IBM and I do work in the finance supply chain for consulting for all of government. I left DHS, but I serve all of government. And, because I've been blessed to be able to be there, have to go through Senate confirmation, through that process, you get to know a lot of people on Capitol Hill. And then because I'm in consulting, I've been doing it for 25 years. And, I just know a lot of people. And I remember, this is something I talk about openly with my colleagues at IBM. So I'm not saying anything here I wouldn't say directly. But I remember coming in and people were like, oh, Troy, you've got a lot of relationships and network. And I was working with somebody and this person said, hey, Troy, go out and meet all these people. And I went out and met the people and I had connections. It was easy, did a bunch of dinners and coffees and I get back and this person's like, where's the business? And I'm looking at him like, I don't think you understand how this works. It's like, there's no doubt that people know what I do. But I go out and talk to people because I enjoy spending time with them. Like I'm a people person. I like building relationships and I'm not into it for a transaction. Like I'm not going to go spend an evening with a couple people and go have dinner and then hope at the very end, they're like, hey, can I get a contract doing this? I'm building a relationship and they know me and they know my brand and they know IBM and if they get an opportunity, and I think even in the corporate world, a lot of times the expectations aren't really realistic. And so I love your story about, you basically put yourself out there, you said, hey, and you showed what type of guy you are and a person. And I think people, not only do they buy from people they like, but they choose to have a relationship back. And I have friends today that, I started a company in 2002 and I remember I did my FBI background check when I was going through Senate confirmation and the FBI comes out I had a bunch of companies and they said, hey, Troy, I want to meet you at a company. And so I go out there and I didn't tell everybody because everybody was kind of freaking out like, oh, the president of the company is going to leave and go serve. And so, but it was kind of hard when the FBI like come in, they're like, what the heck? Hey, the FBI is here to see Troy. So, but they sit you down and, it's like, this is your life. And that, you've had to feed them a bunch of information. Like, I can't believe most of your people that we talk to, you've had relationships with them for 20 something years. And it's like, yeah, that's how I built my business. And so I think, JB, from your perspective, it's just reaffirming, I think, and thank you for sharing that. Because, here you are in military, and I'm hoping the message goes to veterans through transition. This is a very important point that I think you just made, which is I think gives the veteran an idea is like, build the relationships. I had a guy on the show, Todd Neal. he's a master at building the relationships. And through the relationships, then I get interested in him. It's like, what did this guy do? He got 3 Purple Hearts. And then I started hearing it's like on the surface, the relationship forced me to do the research to find out. And then it's like, what can I do to help this guy? So I think it's just what you said is just so right on.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the relationship building is the best. Like even when I was at JSOC, after we would do working groups or different exercises, I really made it a point to do these socials. Mm-hmm. And I think that was really a big piece of the pie where we would all come together. I'd basically rent out a bar or a venue space, depending on how big we were at that point. And initially, my first couple socials, it was only a small little corner or a table or two, and then it grew to like massive rooms because we'd have 100+. Like everybody that attended these conferences or these working groups or planning meetings. Mm-hmm. Like by the end of my time there, everybody, 100% of the people that attended the meetings would all come to the socials, and we always laughed. And the best planning we ever did was at the bar, at the socials. And we just built great relationships, and it was great. And I think that's what, going forward again, back to how did I get with the Angels? Those relationships, everybody kept pointing me to the now director of security for the Angels. And he's like, oh, he's a veteran too. And like, you might know him. And at that point, I didn't know who he was. And then as we began to build our relationships and starting to talk, we ended up finding out we were in the same unit in Hawaii, stationed in the 25th Infantry Division. We deployed together to Iraq. Oh, wow. Didn't know each other. And then he was a support element to my infantry unit. So it was just a small world. And then when you really like begin to get to know somebody, like, those connections happen. So I definitely believe when it really came back down to it, it was obviously the network, the relationships, and then obviously the military connection really connected me back into the Angels organization and into an organization that welcomed veterans and they weren't. I would definitely say still to this day, probably not very familiar to how the military works or the operations, which most people don't, especially here in Southern California or the LA area, because there's no bases really here. But I think that's the fun piece about it is being able to educate, the civilians, I guess you could say, on military operations or how we think or how we lead. And what we do to take care of our people. And I think that's really key, as a military member coming out back into the civilian world, So
JB, talk a little bit about the part I think a lot of people are going to be interested in. What is the job at the Angels and what is the day in the job with the Angels? It's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely exciting. Super fun. I think I wake up every morning and just super excited to come to work and have a really fun day. Every day is totally different. I think it's fun to have my office inside a stadium. So we have our main front office building. That's the office building at our stadium. But then the security department's actually inside the stadium underneath the first floor level. Which is really cool. So in my office, you can see the tiered, the ceiling tiers down because the seats are above me, which is fun. Yeah. I love it. Just some people are like, it's not a real office. I'm like, it's my office. I like it. Yeah. But every day is totally different. I think for me, I do a lot of scheduling of our staff. So we're sending about 90 people of our house staff that work in security, and most of them are all part-time staff. And then working with our interagency partners is a big part of my my job as well. So just making sure that we're in sync with the Anaheim Fire Department, Anaheim Police Department, obviously our intelligence collaboration with the Joint Terrorism Task Force and what we call OCAIAC, the Orange County Intelligence Analytical Center. And then I've started to pull in some of the federal resources that we have here, like the National Counterterrorism Center and CTC. Some folks from DHS, obviously DHS has a massive interest, and there are federal partners when it comes to the sports industry. So really bringing the international or the interagency partnership in and trying to really build a community of interest within our organization to make sure that terrorism, or any security issues don't happen at our stadium. And luckily we've been really good. And defeating anything that may happen. We haven't had any threats, which has been great as well. But I think as you have soft targets, right? And I think we have that ability with our partnerships to make sure that people stay away from us, and they know, you're not going to get through. So daily, that's really the big focus of just making sure that we're keeping all of our players, employees, and guests of Angel Stadium, make sure that they're able to come to the stadium and make a memorable experience in a safe and secure environment. And that's the goal every day.
When like the different types of organizations, like within security, as a retail person that goes to Angel Stadium, you encounter the guards at the beginning, and then you assume that there's stuff going on around you to make sure. I grew up by, not too far from the LA Coliseum when the Raiders were here. And back in the day, my dad and I would go, my brother, we'd go watch a Raiders game, but we stopped going because there would be like a fight breakout in almost every time. And they had bottles and stuff that you could actually bring, and they got pretty violent. And it seemed like it would go on until everybody was exhausted, and I would always sit back and go, "Where in the heck is security?" So it seems like a modern day, you guys, you're totally surveilling the whole operation and making sure that it is a safe experience. You still see crazy stuff on YouTube and all that stuff, but any interesting experiences or anything that you see or interesting information that fans wouldn't have an idea what goes on behind the scene?
Yeah, so I think one of the coolest thing is when a guest is able to come into the stadium, or even a player or employee come into the stadium, and if they feel 100% safe and they come into the stadium, don't even think about security, or like you said back in the Coliseum days when the Raiders were here, you just look around and you just see fight after fight after fight, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the greatest, that makes me super happy when people come in and don't have to worry about a security threat or worrying about getting beat up, no matter what color you're wearing, and worrying about their safety and security. They could bring their kids and enjoy and make a memorable experience. And I think that's cool. And I think that a lot goes back into the training and the aspects and the kind of people that we have within our organization. And then also, we have a command center. So almost like in the military, you have your operations centers or your joint operations centers or tactical operations centers. They have the cameras all around and, the radio communication going on. And I think I've been to a lot of the stadium's communications or operations centers, and I think we have one of the largest. And it's really cool to be in there and watch how the operations work. And as calls are coming in, from a housekeeping call to a popcorn spill on the floor, to a seat broken, to, a toilet backed up, to actual first aid issues, or even a security issue, and how it all operates and comes together into that interagency type of command system. So, and how that works together.
So just to kind of take it off into a little bit of a fun category. So again, growing up here in LA, go to the Forum back in the day and watch the Lakers. And the highlight of the Lakers game, outside of Magic Johnson, the whole crew, was to see Diane Cannon and Jack Nicholson on the side. And what I've noticed at Angel games and all the sporting events is a lot of the star power starts coming out. Does that pose different types of threats or different types of challenges when you have to deal with that type of element inside, or do these people come in with their own type of security and you have to deal with that?
We usually will take care of any of the VIPs that come in at that point. And I mean, we've had Gwen Stefani in the building. We just had one of the most famous TikTokers. He was at the game a couple nights ago. We'll have people in the stadium, and we'll have some extra security in the area, but we want them to have a great experience as well. So usually I would definitely say our fan base and the guests that come in really do leave them alone. And I think you see that across sports in general. Just people are there to enjoy the game too. And usually for the most part, people keep away from them as well. So, but yeah, we do provide some extra security for them.
So the logistics of baseball and managing the security apparatus. You and I have a common friend, Todd Mattern, and he was a police chief in my city, very respected guy. I always try and pump him for information about the Angels, but I was just kind of curious, when you guys go on the road, you and I really, you were in DC a couple of weeks ago, or you almost went to DC. So when we were trying to do our interview, I'm like, hey, if you're coming through for the Nationals, stop by. But you do get to travel a lot for your job. And I guess what is the security apparatus, or to the extent that can be talked about from, how does a team, is every stadium that hosts a team really, it's a handoff to that team, or do you guys have to kind of go on the road with the teams?
Yeah, so Major League Baseball really looked at developing a travel security professional program a few years back. And so travel security professional, TSP for short. And so the teams are responsible, each individual team is responsible for maintaining security and safety of their players and their traveling staff while they're on the road. So as we travel if we left here from, Anaheim to wherever we travel to, we do have a travel security professional, at least one that goes and travels with us. So, and we go out there and just make sure that everything's safe, coordinating with local law enforcement, the hotels that we're staying at, and their security elements, and then obviously working with the home team, whoever we're going to. And I would definitely say within the TSPs across all 30 teams and even the security staff in all 30 teams, we've been able to build a really good relationship between everybody. I'll definitely say, I'm not going to be biased, but I definitely say we have developed a really good program for our visiting teams.
Even the Boston Red Sox?
Even the Boston Red Sox, yeah.
Okay. I thought maybe we could leave them off. Maybe you don't get them a handshake at the beginning. But, okay.
Yeah, so we've done a very good job in accommodating all the visiting teams. Actually, so Todd takes the lead in that and taking the lead of our visiting teams and really coordinating with their traveling staff and their travel security professional, making sure all the families are great too. Everybody comes to Anaheim. Every team does their family trip to Anaheim, and it's because they get to go to Disneyland too and enjoy Southern California beaches. And so we always have tons of family that come, and it's phenomenal. And we do a great job in hosting them. And all the families love coming back here every year, and they always talk about like how much fun they have and how easy it is to work with us at Angel Stadium. And they love the fan base, even the Angel fans that super respectful and helpful to everybody, and everybody from the ushers, everybody's great. And so it's a great group of people. I think that's what makes it more fun is like there are a lot of part-time staff that work there that have different experiences. Like you even mentioned, Todd, like being a police chief, and there's an array and diversity of different people, from 18-year-old, pimple-faced kids that are trying to figure out life to, retired people that have already done their professional careers and now moved on to, this is just a fun place to be. And I think that is what's really cool about the staff at Angel Stadium, is just the diversity and professionalism of the employees and how everybody truly wants to be there. Which is cool.
Hey, let me talk to you a little bit as we kind of get near the close here about your charity work. This is something I was really interested in. Talk about the organizations you're involved with, and how did you get involved with them?
Yeah. So I talked about the Bixby Knolls 5K, 10K run and running high school cross country. And one of my friends and one of the guys that helped me found the Bixby Knolls 5K, 10K run was a guy named Tyler Nason. 2 years younger than me. We were cross country teammates at Poly. And he went off to, as I went to college and then joined the military, he ended up going to Berkeley. Ran cross country and track up in Berkeley, ended up coming back down to Southern California, getting into the aeronautical industry. And he was always super great athlete, loved playing soccer, running. And then one day he was out playing soccer and he jumped up, did a header. And when he went up, he felt this severe pain in his ab area. His dad was an OBGYN doctor, and he told his dad, and his dad worked and got some people to come in and get him to the hospital and take a look at the pain, and they realized that he was stage 4 pancreatic cancer.
Oh my God.
So he was 25 years old, diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And then in 2006, when he was diagnosed, the 5-year survivability was only 4%. So he had really a 96% chance of dying in less than 5 years. And so at that point, I didn't know anything about pancreatic cancer. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know about the mortality rate, nothing. And I think that was, we just all assumed, all of our friends, our friend base, we were just like, oh, it's Tyler. He's gonna be cool. Like he's perfect athlete, and he'll be fine. Maybe some chemo radiation, and he'll be back at it again. And then as time went on, it just got really difficult for him. And then he had called me one day. At this point, I was stationed in Baltimore, Maryland, and he called me, and this was probably 3 years after his diagnosis. And he's like, "Hey, I'm going to DC. The Pancreatic Cancer Action Network is going to be doing an advocacy day there. So somewhat of lobbying with Congress to try to get a bill passed to get more funding to help survival rates for pancreatic cancer patients." And so I'm like, okay, I'm down. Like, I'll meet up with you and your parents and just figure this out, So at that point, it was about 100 people went to Capitol Hill on behalf of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network. And that's how I got really involved, being there to learn about the advocacy into trying to increase survivability for pancreatic cancer patients. So at that point, I think it was 2008, I became involved and became a volunteer with the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, or PanCan for short. And they really it's the largest pancreatic cancer organization in the United States. They help lead the World Pancreatic Cancer Coalition as well. And so they really take a bold action to really look at improving the lives of everyone affected with pancreatic cancer. At that point, I had no family members diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, like nobody affected. It was just my friend Tyler. From there, I just kept going to advocacy days every year. 2011, he passed away, or Tyler passed away after just over a 5.5 year battle. So I I really wanted to continue his fight. Shortly after he was passed away, President Obama signed a bill that helped authorize additional funding for all the deadliest cancers, which we help really take the lead in. And so anything that had a survival rate of under 20% really need to have a strategic plan through the National Cancer Institute, National Institute of Health, and really focus at like building a plan to help increase survivability. So we've done well. We're at 12% now, which is great. Still not good enough, so we're still be fighting. So right now I'm the volunteer affiliate chair for the Orange County affiliate. So I run a group of volunteers here, or lead a group of volunteers here in Orange County to increase advocacy and funding for pancreatic cancer. And so I cover all of Orange County, some of northern San Diego County, Riverside County as well. So we work with Congress as well on doing a lot of advocacy. We also run our annual Walk to End Pancreatic Cancer, which is called the PanCan Purple Stride event. So that's every April, every year. We do 60 events throughout the country, all on the same day. Wow. And so we're pretty excited about that. This year, looks like we'll be back at Angel Stadium, or 2025 looks like we'll be back at Angel Stadium to do the walk again there. And so it's our biggest fundraising event for us. And that's what really helps drive the patient services, helps drive the research, helps drive that survivability. And since I've been volunteering, I've had one of my cousins actually get diagnosed and pass away within a few months of pancreatic cancer. And then I just recently had another cousin just diagnosed, and she's still battling treatment right now. So I think it's close to the heart, close to home, I guess, for me. And it's a passion for myself.
Well, we'd like to be able to help you to whatever extent we can. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I guess kind of in closing, if any sort of message from a perspective, we've talked about your journey as a veteran and being able to make that transition. I loved your networking kind of philosophy of being able to kind of get out there and, put yourself out, and then the job kind of found you. Any other messages for the veterans that are out there that are trying to work through transition, or hope or inspiration that you might want to give them?
Yeah, so I would definitely say you're not alone in the transition, right? And that it's more than the transition, right? So once you transition out from the military service back into the real world, it's that transformation back into being what it was like before, right? And obviously the military spends at least 8 weeks to transition you from a civilian into a service member. They only spend a few days to transition you back from a service member back into a civilian. So I think, finding those resources, leveraging the Veterans Affairs, and I think leveraging the nonprofit organizations in your community. Almost every community whether it's the state or counties or cities have their own veteran resource centers, to leverage them and just really lean on people to help you transition and transform back into the real world. And I think it's key. And meeting up with your friends that you've served with, and never taking that point where you're alone. I think there's been some times, even I've only been out for 2.5, almost 3 years, and there's been some points where I felt alone, and then I just remember to hey, call somebody, and or reach out to services that are out there, and it is hard. That transformation is hard, but everything's out there for you, and just reach out. I think as service members, it's hard for us to go ask for help, but I think it's critical. And there's so many resources out there. I think you had a recent episode too with the member that was at the VA. Yeah,
Mike Parrish.
Yeah, and his episode, if you haven't heard it, but just the services that the VA provides, and within their 3 different sections of that administration, and it's more than just healthcare, and I think everything's out there for us, and take advantage of it. The military and the government took advantage of us, and let those services help you get through it. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good. Well, JB, I appreciate you coming out and being on the show. I am going to have to talk to Todd about how we treat the Boston Red Sox next time they're in town. But and all joking aside, just thank you for taking the time, and I look forward to seeing you when I'm back in town.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Great.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks again for joining me today on the Ameritocracy Show. Be sure to follow me on social media and our website at troyedgar.com, where you can get more information and sign up for my weekly email. I hope you have a great week.